The massive holographic screen flickered to life in the United Earth Council chamber, and every human in the room felt their blood run cold. Commander Nathan Cole stood at attention, his hands clasped behind his back, watching as the alien ambassador's image filled the display. The Vethrani were tall creatures with silver scales and 6 glowing eyes, and this particular ambassador spoke with a voice that carried nothing but contempt. "Humanity is hereby expelled from Concord space," the ambassador announced. "You have 30 standard cycles to remove all your people from our territories. Every colony, every station, every outpost must be abandoned. If you fail to comply, we will destroy you completely." Nathan felt his jaw tighten. Beside him, Lieutenant Maya Santos let out a sharp breath, her dark eyes burning with anger she could barely control. Admiral Patricia Webb, a woman with silver hair and decades of experience, stepped forward to address the transmission. "On what grounds do you make this demand?" she asked. Her voice steady despite the shock everyone felt. The Vethrani ambassador's lipless mouth twisted into something ugly. "Your species is dangerous. You advance too quickly. You breed too fast. You refuse to accept your proper place in the galactic order. The Concord has voted on this matter. 11 species agreed. Only you disagreed. You will leave these stars, or you will die in them." The transmission ended without another word. Silence filled the chamber. Nathan looked around at the gathered leaders, seeing the same mix of disbelief and fury on every face. His younger brother, Captain Daniel Cole, stood near the back of the room, his face pale, but his eyes hard with determination. "They're scared of us," Nathan said quietly. "That's what this is really about. They see how fast we're growing, how quickly we're learning, and it terrifies them." Secretary General Linda Morrison shook her head slowly. She was a practical woman who had spent her whole life in politics, and she understood power better than anyone in the room. "Fear or not, we cannot fight this. The Concord controls most of known space. Their combined fleets are 1,000 times larger than ours. If we resist, they will wipe us out. So we just run away?" Maya's voice cracked with emotion. "We abandon everything our people built out there. The colonies we spent generations creating, the stations where millions of humans live and work. We just tell them to pack up and leave, because some aliens decided we're too ambitious." Admiral Webb raised her hand for quiet. "We don't have a choice right now, Lieutenant. But choices can change over time." The evacuation began the next day. Nathan commanded the withdrawal from the Arcturus system, one of humanity's oldest and most successful colonial regions. He stood on the observation deck of the carrier Endurance, watching transport ships fill with refugees. Families carried whatever they could hold. Children cried as they left the only homes they had ever known. Parents stared at the stars with empty eyes, unable to understand how everything had fallen apart so quickly. Dr. Victor Huang, fleet's chief scientist, found Nathan alone on the deck late one night. Victor was a quiet man who wore glasses and spent most of his time thinking about things other people couldn't understand. But he also understood human nature better than most. "They made a terrible mistake," Victor said softly, standing beside Nathan at the viewport. "The Concord? They seem to have gotten exactly what they wanted." Victor shook his head. "They think they've eliminated a threat. But they haven't eliminated anything. They've just given that threat a reason to become something far worse." Nathan turned to look at the scientist. "What do you mean?" "Humanity wanted to explore. We wanted to trade. We wanted to learn and grow alongside other species. We would have been happy to be part of their galaxy." Victor's eyes reflected the distant stars. "Now we want something else entirely. Now we want revenge. And humans are very, very good at revenge when we put our minds to it." The evacuation continued for 28 days. Nathan watched colony after colony empty out, station after station go dark. He saw the faces of his people change from shock to grief to something harder and colder. He saw children who would grow up remembering this humiliation. He saw young officers who would spend their careers preparing for the day when humanity could strike back. On the 29th day, the last human ship crossed out of Concord space. Alien patrol vessels watched them go with satisfaction. Confident that the primitive humans had been put in their proper place forever, Nathan stood at the viewport of the Endurance, watching the border markers fade into the distance. His brother Daniel came to stand beside him. "What happens now?" Daniel asked. Now we go home. We rebuild. We prepare? Prepare for what?" Nathan's expression was calm, but his eyes held something that made Daniel take a step back. It wasn't anger exactly. It was something deeper and more patient than anger. It was the look of a man who had just been given a purpose that would last longer than his own lifetime. "They gave us 30 days to leave," Nathan said quietly. "When we come back, we won't give them 30 seconds. The fleet made its way back to Earth, carrying millions of refugees and a burning need for justice that would pass from generation to generation. The aliens of the Concord celebrated their victory and quickly forgot about the primitive species they had expelled. They returned to their comfortable lives, secure in the knowledge that the galaxy belonged to them and would always belong to them. They had no idea what they had just created. On Earth, Nathan Cole called a meeting of the highest military and scientific leaders. They gathered in a secure facility deep underground, away from any possible alien observation. "We have two choices," Nathan told them. "We can accept our defeat and spend the rest of our existence as a minor species confined to our own solar system. Or we can use this time to become something the galaxy has never seen before." Admiral Webb nodded slowly. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Everything we have, every resource, every brilliant mind, every ounce of human determination, focused on a single goal. We will develop technology that makes theirs look primitive. We will build weapons they cannot imagine. We will create ships that can cross the galaxy in hours instead of months." Nathan's voice was steady and cold. "And when we are ready, when we have become what they feared we would become, we will return to those stars." "That could take centuries," Linda Morrison said. "Then it takes centuries. But we will never forget what they did to us. We will never forgive. And we will never stop preparing for the day when humanity returns to claim what was taken from us." The vote was unanimous. That night, as Earth's sun set over the Pacific Ocean, a new era in human history began. The Age of Exile had started, but it would not last forever. Somewhere in the cold depths of space, the aliens of the Concord slept peacefully. Unaware that they had just made the worst mistake in galactic history, they had given humanity a reason to hate. And humanity had a very long memory, 200 years. Passed like a slow fire burning in the darkness, Earth became humanity's prison and its forge. The borders drawn by the Concord kept humans confined to their own small corner of the galaxy. Forbidden from expanding, forbidden from trading with other species, forbidden from being anything more than a forgotten curiosity. Alien patrol ships checked on them every few decades, saw their primitive vessels, and reported that the humans remained properly contained. They never saw what was really happening, Commander. Eliza Cole stood in the deep research facility beneath the Antarctic ice. 3 kilometers below the frozen surface, where no alien sensor could reach. She was the great-great-granddaughter of Nathan Cole, and she had inherited his patient fury along with his command. Around her, the most advanced technology humanity had ever created hummed with power. "The spatial compression drive is ready for final testing," reported Dr. Samuel Park, the lead physicist on what they called the Prometheus Project. He was a thin man who rarely slept and never stopped thinking. "If our calculations are correct, this engine will make the fastest Concord ships look like they're standing still." "How much faster?" Eliza asked. Samuel smiled for the first time in weeks. "We stopped being able to measure it accurately. Conservative estimates say 1,000 times faster than anything the Concord has. Realistic estimates say much more than that." General Marcus Wright stood nearby, his scarred face showing no emotion. He had earned those scars 20 years ago in a border skirmish with Concord patrol ships. One of the few times humans had fought back against their oppressors. The experience had only made him more determined. "And the weapon systems?" Marcus asked. "Particle lances that can cut through any shield we've ever encountered. Quantum torpedoes that exist in multiple places at once until they hit their target. Adaptive armor that learns from enemy attacks and becomes immune to them." Samuel pulled up holographic displays showing the specifications. 200 years of focused development, General. Every resource we had, every genius we could find, every drop of human stubbornness poured into making this possible. Liza nodded slowly, feeling the weight of generations pressing down on her shoulders. Her family had led this effort since the beginning. Her great-great-grandfather had started it. Her great-grandfather had continued it. Her grandfather had expanded it. Her father had refined it. And now she would finish it. "Show me the fleet," she said. Samuel led them to a massive display that showed the solar system and the hidden spaces beyond it. Red dots appeared everywhere in the asteroid belt, in the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, in artificial stations hidden in the darkness between stars. Each represented a shipyard. Each shipyard contained vessels that would have seemed impossible to the humans who had fled Concord space 2 centuries ago. 3,000 capital ships, Samuel said. 50,000 support vessels. 2 million soldiers trained since birth in combat techniques that have been refined for generations. This is what humanity has been building while the Concorde ignored us. Dr. Catherine Moore joined them. She was the fleet's chief medical officer, and she had spent her career pushing the limits of human biology. "The enhancement programs are complete," she reported. "Our soldiers heal faster, think quicker, and endure longer than any human in history. They're not superhuman exactly, but they're close enough to make a difference." "And the Concorde has no idea," Marcus said. "Concorde sees exactly what we want them to see." Lisa walked closer to the display. "Studying the hidden shipyards. My great-great-grandmother, Admiral Webb, designed the deception before she died. We keep a small fleet of primitive ships near Earth. We act defeated and broken whenever the aliens check on us. We let them feel superior and safe. While building an armada behind their backs," Catherine finished. Eliza's father. Admiral Christopher Cole was too old now for active command, but he still advised the War Council. She had visited him that morning, sitting beside his bed in the family home overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. "Your great-great-grandfather made me promise," Christopher had told her, his voice weak, but his eyes still sharp. "He made his son promise, and his son made me promise. We would never forget. We would never stop preparing. And when the time came, we would make them pay for every tear our people shed, for every home we lost, for every child who grew up in exile." "The time is almost here," Eliza had replied, then finished what Nathan started. "Show the galaxy what happens when you try to destroy humanity." Now, standing in the heart of humanity's secret power, Eliza made her decision. "Begin final preparations," she ordered. "I want the fleet ready to move within 6 months. Every ship armed, every soldier in position, every system checked twice." "The Concorde will detect us the moment we cross the border," Marcus warned. "Good, I want them to see us coming. I want them to have just enough time to understand what's about to happen before it actually happens." Eliza turned to face her officers. "For 200 years, our people have lived with the memory of being expelled from the stars. Our grandparents told us stories about the homes they lost. Our parents raised us to remember the humiliation. Now it's our turn to create new stories." Samuel looked at the display showing their hidden fleet. "When we attack, there won't be any going back. The Concorde will throw everything they have at us. Let them. Their technology hasn't advanced in centuries. Why would it? They were comfortable. They were safe. They had no enemies to fear and no reason to improve." Liza's voice hardened. "We had nothing but enemies. Nothing but fear. Nothing but reasons to improve. That's the difference between us." The final months of preparation passed quickly. Soldiers ran through combat drills for the 1,000th time. Engineers checked every ship's system with obsessive attention. Scientists verified that every weapon would perform as expected. 200 years of work came together in a wave of activity that swept across humanity's hidden infrastructure. On the night before the fleet launched, Eliza stood alone on the observation deck of the command ship Retribution. She looked out at Earth, the world that had sheltered her species during its long exile. Tomorrow, she would lead humanity back to the stars that had been taken from them. "Grandfather would have loved to see this," said her brother, Captain Matthew Cole, joining her at the viewport. All of them would have, every generation that worked toward this moment, that lived and died, knowing they would never see the victory they were building. Eliza touched the viewport gently. "We carry them with us tomorrow. Every one of them. Are you scared?" Eliza considered the question honestly. "No, I'm ready. We're all ready. 200 years of being told we were lesser, that we didn't deserve to walk among the stars. Tomorrow, we prove them wrong. Tomorrow, we show the galaxy what humanity became while they weren't watching." The fleet launched at midnight, emerging from hidden shipyards across the solar system and the dark spaces beyond. 3,000 warships, 50,000 support vessels, 2 million soldiers. The largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Moving toward the borders that had confined them for 2 centuries ahead of them, the Concorde slept peacefully, still believing that the humans were broken and harmless. They were about to receive the worst. Awakening in galactic history, the Vethrani border station detected something strange at 3:47 in the morning. Standard Time. Station Commander Kethril had been watching this sector for 6 years, and nothing interesting had ever happened here. The humans were contained in their little corner of space. Other Concorde species had better things to do than visit this remote region. It was boring duty, but boring duty was safe duty. So when his sensors showed a massive energy distortion forming just beyond scanning range, assumed his equipment was broken. He ordered a diagnostic check and went back to his evening meal. 30 seconds later, he realized his equipment was working perfectly, and he understood that he was about to die. The first human dreadnought merged from compressed space like a giant beast breaking through the surface of an ocean. It was 5 kilometers long, covered with weapons that Kethral's computer could not even identify. The ship was so far beyond anything the Concorde possessed that it might as well have come from another universe. Then the second ship appeared. Then the third. Then 10 more. Then 50. "This is Commander Eliza Cole of the United Earth Expeditionary Force," a human voice announced on all communication channels. 200 years ago, your Concorde expelled our species from these stars. You called us dangerous. You called us unpredictable. There was a pause. You were right. Kethril barely had time to send a warning message before a beam of light hit his station and turned it into expanding gas. He and his crew were dead before they could feel anything. The warning message reached Concorde Central Command 4 hours later. The officials who received it dismissed it as some kind of joke or mistake. A handful of human ships had destroyed a border station. Unfortunate, certainly, but hardly a crisis. The humans had always been aggressive. A small punishment fleet would remind them of their place. Admiral Ythros of the Mendari hegemony was given command of the response force. The Mendari were the greatest warriors in the Concorde, proud and confident in their military power. Ythros gathered 300 warships, the finest in the Mendari fleet, and set course for the border. "How many human ships are we facing?" he asked his tactical officer as they approached the battle zone. "Approximately 50, Admiral." Ythros made a sound of contempt. 50 ships against 300. This will be finished quickly." It was finished quickly, just not the way Ythros expected. The human ships moved with speed that seemed impossible. They appeared in one place, fired weapons that cut through Mendari shields like they were made of paper, and then appeared somewhere else before the Mendari could even aim at them. Ythros watched his tactical display fill with red markers as ship after ship was destroyed. "Turn fire," he screamed. "All ships, concentrate fire on the nearest enemy." His ships fired everything they had. Missiles, energy beams, projectile weapons. Nothing worked. The human ships simply avoided most of the attacks, and the few hits that landed seemed to do no damage at all. Their armor absorbed the weapons and adapted, becoming immune to whatever had just hit it. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, every Mendari ship was destroyed. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel. News of the defeat spread through Concorde space faster than any ship could travel. Initial reports were dismissed as lies or exaggeration. The Mendari were the finest warriors in the galaxy. They could not have lost to humans. It was impossible. Then the human fleet kept advancing. It became clear that the impossible was happening. Commander Ryan Foster led the ground assault on the Mendari colony world of Thraxis. His soldiers moved through the alien city with perfect coordination, their powered armor protecting them from weapons that would have killed their ancestors instantly. The Mendari defenders fought bravely but uselessly. Nothing they did could stop the humans. Civilian areas are secure, Ryan reported to Commander Eliza Cole aboard the Retribution. Military resistance is ending. The Mendari governor has requested terms for surrender. Tell him there are no terms, Eliza replied. There is only submission. His people will accept human authority, or they will face the consequences. Understood.
Nice.
Within a week, Thraxis was under human control. Within a month, half of Mendari space had fallen. Within 3 months, the entire Mendari hegemony had surrendered, and humanity was just getting started. The Vethrani were next. They tried to negotiate, offering trade deals and territory and apologies for the expulsion 2 centuries ago. Eliza listened to their ambassadors' desperate offers and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. 200 years ago, your people gave us 30 days to leave our homes, she said. You offered no negotiation. You offered no compromise. You simply told us to go or die. She leaned forward in her command chair. Now I'm telling you the same thing. Surrender or be destroyed. You have 30 hours to decide. The Vethrani surrendered in 12. Species after species fell to the human advance. Some fought and were crushed. Some surrendered immediately and were treated relatively well. Some tried to hide and were found anyway. The technology humanity had developed during 2 centuries of exile was so far ahead of anything the Concord possessed that the war was not really a war at all. It was a demonstration. Dr. Catherine Moore walked through a captured Vethrani research facility, studying the alien technology with something between amusement and pity. This is what they were so proud of, she said to Eliza, who had come to inspect the facility. This is the technology that made them feel superior to us. It's primitive. Our civilian ships are more advanced than their military vessels. They stopped advancing, Elisa replied. They had no reason to improve. They were comfortable and safe at the top of the galaxy. Why would they push themselves to become better? While we had every reason, Catherine nodded. The exile was supposed to weaken us. Instead, it made us stronger than they could imagine. The final battle for Concord space took place near the galactic core, where the last allied fleet of 6 species made its desperate stand. They had gathered every ship they could find, nearly 10,000 vessels. It's the largest fleet in galactic history, the human fleet that met them. It's numbered only 500 ships. The battle lasted 2 hours. When it was finished, the Allied fleet no longer existed, and humanity had lost exactly 17 vessels. Eliza stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the debris field where 10,000 alien ships had died. She felt tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. This was the weight of 200 years finally being lifted from her shoulders. Signal the Concord Council, she ordered. Tell them to prepare for our arrival. Tell them that humanity has returned to claim its place among the stars. She paused, remembering the stories her family had passed down through generations. The faces of the refugees, the tears of the children, the silent fury of her great-great-grandfather as he watched his people flee into exile. Tell them that this time we're not leaving. The message was sent. The Concord Council received it in horrified silence. The species that they had expelled, that they had dismissed as primitive and dangerous, had come back with power beyond anything they had ever seen. And now that species wanted answers, humanity's exile was over. The reckoning had begun. The Great Hall of the Concord had stood for 3,000 years. It had seen empires rise and fall. It had witnessed treaties that shaped the destiny of countless worlds. It had hosted celebrations and mournings, victories and defeats. For 30 centuries, it had been the heart of galactic civilization. Now it heard the sound of human boots on its sacred. Floor Commander Eliza Cole walked through the massive chamber with slow, measured steps. Her uniform was simple and dark, without decoration or medals. She needed no symbols of rank. Everyone in the galaxy knew who she was. Behind her walked her command staff, and behind them stood rows of human soldiers in powered armor, their weapons held ready. The representatives of 11 species watched her approach. Some showed fear on their alien faces. Some showed hatred. A few showed something that might have been respect. All of them showed defeat. The Vethrani ambassador stood at the central speaking platform. He was old, his silver scales dull with age, his 6 eyes dim and tired. He was a descendant of the ambassador who had delivered the expulsion order to Nathan Cole 200 years ago. The irony was not lost on anyone. "Commander Cole," he began, his voice translated into flat English by the communication systems. "The Concord is prepared to discuss terms for a peaceful resolution of this conflict." "There will be no discussion," Eliza said. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle, which somehow made it more frightening than any shout. "There will be terms. You will accept them." She gestured to Captain Daniel Morrison, her tactical officer, who activated a holographic display showing the entire galaxy. Effective immediately, the Galactic Concord is dissolved. All member species will submit to United Earth governance. Your military fleets will be dismantled. Your weapons research will stop. Any expansion beyond your current territories will require human approval. Eliza let the words hang in the air. "You will become what you tried to make us. Contained, controlled, lesser." The Mendari representative, once the proudest warrior in the galaxy, stepped forward with rage in his eyes. "You cannot simply declare yourselves rulers of the galaxy. We still have resources. We still have hidden fleets. We can still fight. You have nothing."
Oh.
General Marcus Wright spoke for the first time, his scarred face hard as stone. "We know about your secret forces in the outer systems. We found them yesterday. They no longer exist. We know about your emergency weapon stockpiles. We found those too. We know about the biological weapons you were developing in secret, breaking your own laws." He smiled without warmth. "You have no secrets from us anymore." The Mendari representative stepped back, his confidence shattered. Eliza continued her walk toward the central platform. Passing representatives who had once looked down on humanity as primitive animals, she stopped directly in front of the Vethrani ambassador. 200 years ago, you stood in a place like this and decided the fate of my species without asking our opinion. You called us dangerous because we grew too quickly. You called us unpredictable because we refused to accept being treated as lesser beings. You gave us 30 days to abandon everything we had built among the stars. Her voice remained calm, almost conversational. You created what you feared. You took a species that wanted nothing more than to explore and learn and trade, and you turned us into conquerors. Every death in this war, every destroyed ship, every fallen city, every species that now kneels before human authority, all of it is on your hands. You did this? You created this. We were trying to protect ourselves, the ambassador said weakly. Your species advanced so quickly. You were unpredictable. We didn't know what you might become. Now you know." Liza turned to address the entire chamber. "My great-great-grandfather watched his people flee in shame from these stars. He told his children that one day humanity would return, that we would show the galaxy what we were truly capable of, that we would make you understand the mistake you made." She spread her arms, indicating the soldiers behind her, the ships in orbit above, the vast military machine that had crushed 11 species in less than a year. He was right. The formal surrender ceremony took 3 hours. Each species representative had to approach the central platform, announce their submission to human authority, and mark the document that ended their independence. Some did it with quiet dignity. Some did it with barely controlled rage. A few had to be physically supported by aides, because their legs would not carry them. Dr. Catherine Moore watched the ceremony from a side gallery, her aged face thoughtful. "They never understood us," she said to Eliza during a brief pause in the proceedings. "The enhancement programs that made our soldiers superior came from research we did on captured alien biology. The weapons that destroyed their shields were based on stolen Mendari technology, improved beyond anything they thought possible. We used their own knowledge against them, refined it with human creativity, and turned it into something they couldn't match. They thought we were too primitive to learn from them, Eliza replied. They thought keeping us isolated would keep us weak. Instead, it gave us time to study everything they had and make it better. Catherine shook her head. Pride destroyed them. They were so confident in their superiority that they never imagined we could catch up, let alone surpass them. The last signature was added as the artificial sun of the Concord capital began to set. The Vethrani ambassador, who had spoken the words of expulsion 2 centuries ago through his ancestor, now spoke the words of surrender. The Galactic Concord accepts the authority of United Earth. Over all territories and species formerly under Concord governance, we submit ourselves to human rule and pledge our obedience to human law. Eliza nodded once, accepting the surrender without celebration or gloating. This was not a moment for joy. This was the completion of a task that had taken 200 years and cost more lives than anyone could count. You will find us to be fair rulers, she told the assembled representatives. We don't want your extinction. We don't want your suffering. We want your submission and your obedience. Give us those, and you will be treated well. Resist, and you will be crushed. She turned to leave, then stopped and looked back at the chamber one final time. My ancestor watched children cry as they were forced to leave their homes. He watched families lose everything they had built. He watched proud human beings reduced to refugees because you decided we didn't deserve to exist among the stars. Liza's voice finally showed a hint of the emotion she had kept controlled throughout the ceremony. We remember every tear. We remember every humiliation. We remember every moment of those 200 years. She walked toward the exit, her boots echoing in the silent chamber. And now, so will you? That night, as human ships took up permanent positions in orbit around the Concord capital, Eliza sat alone in her quarters aboard the Retribution. She held a small holographic image in her hand, a picture of Nathan Cole taken shortly after the expulsion. He looked tired and angry, but there was determination in his eyes. We did it, grandfather, she whispered to the image. We came back. We won. Everything you worked for, everything our family sacrificed, it finally paid off. The image didn't respond, of course. Nathan Cole had been dead for nearly 2 centuries. But Eliza felt somehow that he knew. That all of them knew, all the generations who had worked and planned and prepared for this moment, humanity had been expelled. From the stars in shame, humanity had returned as conquerors. The galaxy would never be the same. 100 years after the conquest, the galaxy had become something entirely new. Governor Nathan Cole VII stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, the massive administrative center that now coordinated affairs across known space. He was named for his legendary ancestor, and he carried the weight of that name with quiet dignity. Below him, ships from dozens of species moved through the station's traffic lanes in orderly patterns. Vethrani merchants traded with Mendari engineers. Former enemies worked together on projects that would have been unthinkable in the old Concord. The quarterly reports are ready. Governor announced his aide, a young woman named Sophie Grant. She was efficient and smart. Exactly the kind of person humanity had spent centuries cultivating. Production is up 12% across all sectors. Civil unrest is at the lowest point in recorded history. The integration programs are working even better than we hoped. Nathan nodded, still watching the ships below. What about the resistance movements? Sophie hesitated briefly. They're scattered and weak. The last significant group was dealt with on Vethros Prime 2 months ago. Dealt with how? Re-education and relocation. No executions, as per standing policy. Nathan allowed himself a small smile. That policy had come from his grandmother. To implement it after the initial harshness of the conquest had given way to the practical needs of governing. Dead subjects couldn't work. Angry subjects caused rebellion. Integrated subjects created prosperity. It was a simple calculation. Humanity had become very good at calculations over the centuries. Ambassador Keithrel the Younger requested a meeting that afternoon. He was the grandson of the station commander who had died in the first moments of humanity's return. and he now served as the official voice of the veteran people in human government. Governor Cole, he began with formal politeness, I come with concerns from my people about the new education requirements. Tell me about them. Kethral's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, a Vethrani expression of nervousness. The requirement that all young Vethrani learn human history alongside our own is causing some distress. Many feel it is an attempt to erase our identity as a species. Nathan considered this carefully. Is that what you believe is happening? I believe intentions matter less than what people see. And what my people see is their children being taught to think like humans, to value human things, to measure themselves by human standards. Walk with me, Nathan said. They moved through the station's corridors, passing humans and aliens working side by side. Nathan pointed to a research laboratory where Mendari and human scientists collaborated on new faster-than-light communication systems. 300 years ago, my ancestors were thrown out of these stars because other species were afraid of what we might become. They were right to be afraid, in a way. We became exactly what they tried to prevent. He stopped and turned to face Kethral directly. But we also became something they didn't expect. We became rulers who understand what it means to be pushed down by others. To have your future decided by people who see you as inferior. Nathan started walking again. The education programs exist because your children need to understand why the galaxy is the way it is now. They need to know why their grandparents were conquered. They need to understand humanity, not to replace Vethrani identity, but to live successfully in a galaxy that humans control. If they learn all this and still hate you, then they hate us with knowledge instead of ignorance. That's better for everyone. Kethral was silent for a moment. My grandfather died believing humans were lucky savages who had somehow cheated their way to victory. He never understood what had really happened. What do you believe happened? The Vethrani ambassador's scales shifted colors, showing deep thought. I believe the old Concord made a terrible error. Not in being afraid of humanity, but in choosing the middle path. They should have either destroyed your species completely or embraced you completely. Instead, they chose exile, and exile created an enemy that spent 200 years becoming unstoppable. That's a very honest view. Honesty is more useful than comfortable lies. My species told itself comfortable lies for thousands of years. Where did that get us? They reached the observation deck where Nathan had started his day. The galaxy spread out before them through the massive windows, vast and strange, and now united under human control. I've been reading the old records, Kethral said. The reports from before the expulsion. Do you know what first made the Concord notice your species? Our growth rate, probably. Our technology advancement. Our refusal to accept limits? No. Those concerns came later. Kethral's eyes focused on the distant stars. What first caught their attention was your compassion. The early reports note that humans would risk their own lives to save strangers, that your ships would divert from important missions to rescue other species from danger, that you seemed to genuinely care about beings who were completely different from you. Nathan frowned. That made them afraid? It made them unable to understand you. Strong species are supposed to be selfish. Advanced species are supposed to be cold and calculating. But humans were neither, and that unpredictability scared the Concord more than any weapon could have. Kethral turned to face Nathan. They thought exile would crush that strange spirit. They thought 200 years of suffering would make you bitter and small and predictable. It made us bitter, Nathan admitted, but not small. No. Instead, you've built the largest empire the galaxy has ever seen. You conquered species that had been dominant for millennia. You reshaped everything. Kethral made a gesture that meant something like a shrug. And yet you didn't destroy us. You didn't enslave us as cruelly as you could have. You created a system where your former enemies can eventually become your partners. Eventually is the key word. The wounds are still fresh. Some of your people may never accept living under human rule. Some individuals, perhaps, but species adapt. We have to, or we don't survive. Kethral's voice grew thoughtful. Give us a few more generations. Your great-great-grandfather planted seeds of revenge. Perhaps your descendants will harvest reconciliation instead. That evening, Nathan wrote his annual report to the Colonial Assembly. He included the usual numbers about production and population and political stability. But he also wrote something more personal. We returned to these stars with devastation in our hearts. Our ancestors were wronged, and we made the galaxy pay for that wrong. But power built on revenge cannot last forever. If humanity's rule is to endure, it must become more than just conquest. It must become justice. He thought about deleting those words as too philosophical for an official document. Instead, he continued writing. My ancestor Nathan Cole witnessed the expulsion. He promised that humanity would return. He was right. But I wonder if he imagined what that return would cost us, both in what we had to become and what we did to others. We have achieved dominion over the stars. The question now is whether we can achieve wisdom as well. He saved the report and walked to his window. The stars burned cold and distant, the same stars that had watched humanity's humiliation and humanity's triumph. Somewhere out there, descendants of the refugees who had fled 2 centuries ago now governed territories larger than the old. Concord's entire domain. Ships with human names patrolled borders that no alien council had established. Children of 100 species learned human languages and human history alongside their own traditions. It was not the galaxy Nathan's ancestors had dreamed of. It was not the peaceful partnership they had once hoped to build with other species. The exile had changed humanity, made them harder and colder and more determined to never be victims again. But perhaps, given enough time and wisdom, the galaxy could become something better. Perhaps the children now being educated in mixed schools would grow up seeing cooperation instead of conquest. Perhaps the species now working together on Unity Station would eventually see each other as partners rather than rulers and subjects. Perhaps humanity's return with devastation was not the end of the story, but only the middle. The stars offered no answers. They never did. They simply watched, as they had always watched, as species rose and fell and struggled toward whatever future awaited them. For now, that future belonged to humanity. Whether they would prove worthy of it remained to be seen. But Nathan Cole VII, standing at his window with the weight of history on his shoulders, believed they would.